Let's take a look here at Macro 2017 FRQ number 2. All right, there it is. Assume that an economy is in long-run equilibrium. Assume that consumers wish to hold less money because they use credit cards more frequently to purchase goods and services than cash. Definitely a trend that has been true over the last few decades, I would say, for sure. Even more so in recent years. Okay, so money market graph. Let's just let's sketch it over here, I guess. Right, so money market graph is going to have the nominal interest rate over here. And then over here is going to be the quantity, but let's just call it quantity of money, right? Quantity of money demanded. Okay, so as usual, right, money supply is vertical there at whatever the money supply is. And then we have a downward sloping demand curve here. And what they want us to show is the effect of the reduced holdings of money on the equilibrium nominal interest rate in the short run, right? So initially we had, let's just call this R1. Now, right, how are we going to show this effect, right? It's a reduction in demand, right? People demand less money. You know, it's wish to hold less money is another way of saying, you know, well, demand decreased, right? They don't need the actual cash because they're going to use credit cards, and they don't have to carry the cash. You know, personally, I rarely carry cash anymore. You know, there was a day maybe 20 years ago where you always had to have some cash in your wallet, right? Now, not so the case anymore. So we have this leftward shift in demand. Let's call that demand 2. And then down here we have, let's say, R2. So show the effect of the reduce on the nominal interest rate in the short run. Okay, so we started R1 was greater than R2. So we know that interest rates are decreasing based upon this. All right, we showed that in the graph here. Based on the change in the interest rate in part A, what will happen to each of the following in the short run? Okay, prices of bonds. All right, price. So let's draw a seesaw here, right? On bonds. On one side you have price, and the other side you have yield. So these are always going to move inversely to each other, right? If one is going up, the other is going down. You can't have them both up, right? They're going to be on opposite sides. So let's draw this a little bit higher, right? So they're not balanced, but one is going to be up and one is going to be down. In this case, so we just, yield is another word for interest rate, right? So interest rates went down. So therefore, if yield is down, price of previously issued bonds is increasing, right? So price goes up. And this one, you know, we don't need to explain, but it's important to know that these move inversely to each other, right? So if interest rates are going down, prices are going up, and flip that the other way. If interest rates are going up, bond prices are going down. Okay, part 2 is the price level and real income. And I want to explain. So let's talk about, so we already observed that interest rates are going down. So think about this back to the ADAS model, and how is reduced interest rates affecting the ADAS model? Well, interest sensitive components, right? So consumption, the C is interest rate sensitive, right? Consumption is going to increase. Investment is going to increase, right? That's interest rate sensitive. And part of exports and exports is also interest sensitive, but mainly those other components. So explain what's going on at the price level and the real income. So we could just do this quickly over here, right? So we've got, you know, short run, aggregate supply, and aggregate demand. So everything we just talked about is serving to stimulate aggregate demand, right? Shift aggregate demand outward this way. And then so let's do a quick comparison, right? So quantity, which is the word for over here increased, and then also price level increase, right? We went from here up to here. So a quick little sketch on the side there, and understanding the feed through mechanism, the logic between lower interest rates and then higher, consumption and investment gets you to this answer. So both of these are increasing, and you do need to explain, right? So you kind of got to work through a couple of sentences to kind of explain that logic. Again, it's sort of an economic logic question there. All right, part C is, let's see, with a constant money supply based on your answer to B2. All right, so we just talked about the price level and real income increasing. Will the velocity of money increase, decrease, or remain the same, or is the change indeterminate? Okay, so we need to know the quantity theory of money, right? So the formula is money supply times velocity equals price level times output, right? So what we just talked about, both of these variables, right, which end up equaling nominal GDP, we just talked about both these variables increasing, right? So we know this side of the equation has increased. They tell us here constant money supply. So this one's staying constant. So therefore, by this equation being true, we know velocity must increase, right? It's mathematically sort of true. So the answer here to part C will increase, right? Should be that one. And this one, you don't need an explanation there. But you really do need to know this equation and understand kind of what they're asking to be able to get to the correct answer. Otherwise you're just kind of making a stab in the dark guess there at that one. All right, part D, if the central bank wishes to reverse the change in the interest rate identified in part A, what open market operation would it use? All right, pay attention to the open market operation. Open market operations are always going to equal, what is the Federal Reserve doing with bonds? Are they buying bonds or are they selling bonds? That's what they're doing in the open market. So always associate the term open market and what they're doing with bonds. So we got to go back. Part A. So we identified earlier interest rates are decreasing, right? We can go back to our graph over here if you want to think about it that way. So now, in this case, they want to reverse this, right? So what federal open market policy raises interest rates? We want the rate to go up. So what do they need to do? Well, if you go back to our graph, we want to undo this, right? And they're manipulating this money supply graph curve. So do we need to go increase the money supply or decrease the money supply? Well, if we need to raise the interest rate back up and move along this curve here, we need to shift this curve back this way, right? So we need to reduce money supply. And how does that do that? How does the Federal Reserve do that? Through open market operations. Well, they sell bonds to the banks. The banks then have to pay cash for those bonds, right? So the cash is removed from the bank balance sheet. They now have bonds, which is decreasing the money supply. So therefore, we are increasing the interest rate and sort of counteracting the change identified in part A.